Hi, everybody. Just a reminder, my name is Darya. I'm in Israel. I'm a tour guide, and I'm doing presentation based on questions that I receive. So in the last session, we talked about the geopolitics of Israel. There were lots of maps showing how our little country that is smaller than Lake Michigan is being pummeled on every side. 7 countries and the International Forum. And this session will cover the spiritual, domestic, international relations aspect of the country. I'm going to try to present Israel in light of the Bible and its place within the nations based on the questions that you receive. So, in the last session, we talked about Hamas and other terrorist organizations work. So the first question today is, how does Israel's government work? The question is humorous because most of us will say it doesn't work. But in all seriousness, the story starts in the 5th century BC when Ezra and Nehemiah convened the council in Jerusalem. In Nehemiah 9, the Great Assembly is mentioned. And in later Jewish writings, completely based on tradition, it says that there were 120 members of this Great Assembly. So when the state of Israel formed, at their very first government, they chose that number symbolically to make up the parliament. So there will always be 120 members in the Knesset. Now, to find 2 people to agree on anything 100% is very rare. So there's no way that we will ever have 120 that agree on everything. And that is the point. I mean, books have been written about it. We joke that we will, we all have more than one opinion on any given subject. And that definitely spills over into our parliament sessions. We do have a constitution, but not like America. We have a few national laws that protect all citizens and give them all equal rights, no matter who they are. But there will always be new bills being proposed and old ones up for review. Now, America's government is bicameral, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, based on a representative system with a House of Representatives and states Senate. Obviously you're more familiar with it than I am. I do know that all the countries in this map in blue are like America in that they have a bicameral legislature. Israel's government is a parliamentary democracy run by a unicameral parliament. I have to stop myself from saying caramel. Unicameral, which is a system of proportional representation. So it's a 1-chamber legislature. Every party, we have lots and lots. Every party that runs in the election presents a list of candidates. The number of candidates entering the House of Representatives is proportional to the percentage. I'll cut a long story short. We choose our party, it's a little card, put it in an envelope and post it into the ballot box. And theoretically, with all of these parties, everybody has some kind of representation as long as they make a 3.5% threshold. Now, the party that gets the most votes out of 120 is not yet the winner. They need to be able to put together a coalition where they will each get, in the coalition, they have to have a majority of 61 seats. So we always will have a coalition with various parties working together to make our laws. Even our opposition, which is the other 60 seats or 59, they will also be represented. So our coalition gets to talk and our opposition also. Now, all of the rules are based on our one basic human dignity and liberty rule, which is enacted to protect the country's main human rights for all the citizens. And the Supreme Court has the authority to disqualify any law contradicting it. You might remember that there was a stalemate for a number of years, many failed elections with nobody able to form a coalition. We had 5 elections within 3 years because the parties differ so much and they were fighting even within their own parties. Netanyahu, this last time, got a majority again, which meant that he got to form a coalition. There were so many compromises made, and nobody's really happy on either side of the system. Netanyahu left the last coalition he was in because of criminal allegations, and then went into this coalition with criminal charges pending. Many citizens protesting against him. It might sound familiar to you. And then the 7th of October happened. He formed a temporary war cabinet, which he now dissolved 8 months into the war. Now, your question was my own opinion about Netanyahu. Now, remembering for every one Jew, there could be 3 opinions. It's how I feel about all politicians. Firstly, he's a fallible human. He can't save us. He can't defend and protect us. His words don't really have much power. And as the joke goes, how do you know a politician is lying? His lips are moving. To be fair, he did a really good job when he was foreign minister of Israel. He spent a lot of time in America when he was growing up, so his English is excellent. He's a good orator. The problem we have is that he's been around for a very long time in power, and he hasn't trained anybody to take over from him, which leaves us in a predicament. There is that old adage about politicians, in-laws, and guests. If they stay around for too long, they start to smell. Nevertheless, I have to turn to scripture for direction, and I'm going to give account for my obedience, not my gossip or my opinions. So, I have 2 passages here from Romans 13 and from 1 Timothy 2. Whether I like my leader or not, there are instructions of how to act. I need to be praying. I need to be, looking at this from God's perspective, not from man's. God's system of rule was originally a theocracy. He allowed for monarchy. The Greeks tried to bring in a democracy, but people forget that in ancient Greece, a democracy simply meant that 30% of the men of the population made the decisions. I don't believe there's a true democracy anywhere in the world, and I'm not so sure we're called to defend that either. Maybe that's controversial, I don't know. But what we have right now is dictatorships in the form of autocracy. We have the evil terrorist kleptocracies like Hamas. But what we have happening in the West now, I see in Western politics, and then filtering into Israeli politics, is a celebrity system. It votes by popularity. And I think that it explains why things are so polarized. All this to say, Israel is a mess, and that is why I also have to pray. Now, this next question is quite heavy. It could take up a whole presentation for itself, truly. It's one of my specialization subjects. I could talk about it all day, but I will do my best to summarize for the sake of this presentation. Here's the question. What is the spiritual state of the majority of Israel? And are they secular, Orthodox, Christian? So it's important to remember that for 400 years, the Ottomans allowed many people groups to settle here. And under Turkish rule, minority groups were dealt with first under a millet system and then by Tanzimat reforms. Basically, it meant that everyone who had Turkish citizenship and lived in this area were governed by their own courts. So the Turkish Muslims were governed by the Sharia law, the Turkish Christians were under canon law, and that itself had its roots in Eastern Christian Orthodoxy, and Turkish Jews under rabbinic halakha law. So there were always Jews living here in the land in the 4 holy cities, that's Jerusalem, Hebron, Tiberias, and Sfat. There were Druze and Armenians. They had their own court systems too. And this system continued throughout the Ottoman rule, and then the British, when they got the mandate to settle Jews into their ancestral homeland, it persisted. They didn't change anything. Why I'm bringing this up is to explain that even if someone is secular or atheist, doesn't follow any of those religions, they are still subject to these outdated, antiquated laws. For example, we don't have civil marriage, only religious. So if you're Christian and you want to marry a Muslim, you have a problem. And if you're Jewish and you want to marry a Christian, you have a problem. A lot of people leave the country to go and get married. Even, in those days, under the Turks, religion was seen as an ethnicity long before it was seen as a religious construct. So, in fact, for the most part, it was only the Muslims who emphasized religion in their ideology. And today it's easier to talk to Muslims about matters of faith. Because for Christians and Jews, I'm talking generally now, they don't have a belief system as much as a ritualistic approach to their existence. And it's their traditions and, what they wear and things like that dictate their annual cycle. So the next picture I'm going to show you is a basic breakdown of our demographic landscape. The most current statistics from the Central Bureau of Statistics in Jerusalem show that in May 2024, the population of Israel was 9.9 million, which is really, we nearly at 10 million. That's divided into 73.2% Jews and 21.1% Arabs and 5.7% other. So in other words, a quarter of our population is not Jewish. Our Muslim population is mostly Sunni. It makes up the largest percentage of the Arab sector. Then we have other Islam-based offshoots like the Druze. I mentioned them earlier, very interesting esoteric ethno-religious group that came out of Islam, specifically Ismailism, which is a Shia branch of, not Sunni, of Islam. And their influence is Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Gnosticism, and it's a very secretive religion, and they don't allow converts. They have a very specific attire that has not changed since the 11th century, and they believe in something called transmigration of the soul. Anyway, we're not going to go into that. Other Islam-based minorities that we have here are the Circassians, the Ahmadis, the Baha'i, the Bedouins. And our minority groups fascinate me. I could spend all day talking about them. So I'm going to restrain myself. Before I talk about the Christian and Jewish groups, I will mention the Karaites, who see themselves as Jewish, and the Jews do not see them as Jewish, and the Samaritans, who see themselves as the original Jews, and the Jews don't accept that. And Samaritans don't accept the Jews. But both those, the Karaites and the Samaritans, fall between the cracks. So it's interesting. The Samaritans, even though their influence comes from the first 5 books of the Bible, their version has 6,000 differences, some small, some really big. The most obvious discrepancies is the complete absence of Jerusalem in their 5 books of Moses. And then the Karaites only read the first 5 books of Moses. They don't follow rabbinic Judaism at all. Anyway, Christian sector, like I said, they make up just over 2% of our population. They are not Christian by faith. This is an ethnicity. I can't stress that enough. We have Armenians, not to be confused with the doctrine of Arminianism. We have Aramaeans, various Orthodox traditions, Greek Orthodox, Latin Catholics, Copts, that's from Egypt, Ethiopic, Syrian Orthodox, Syrian Catholic, Greek Catholic. It's a mix of Orthodox, Greek Orthodox and Catholicism. They're actually called Melkite, and they're the largest Christian group within our Christian population. I mentioned Armenians, but then there's Armenian Catholics. Then also within the Arab community, we've got Anglicans and Lutherans. Those falling into these categories might be active churchgoers. Most of them are activists, not in a good way, as in they are anti-Israel activists. They, in the last 2 or 3 decades, they have taken on Palestinian identity. And despite their name Christian, their allegiance is not to Christ or anything in the Bible for that matter. Their loyalty is to Pan-Arabism. In these organizations, we have the birth of Palestinian liberation theology, which works hand in glove with radical Islam. Most of them have never read a Bible. Our Christian Arab friends say that the Bible is for the past. They go to church for weddings, funerals, christenings, other social events. but try to talk to them about Jesus or matters of faith, and it's an exercise in futility. They rely on their church leaders for direction and guidance, and their lives, like I said, they're centered around various fairs and parades, liturgical celebrations, saints' days. They dress up in all their finery to show that they aren't Muslim and they aren't Jewish. Most of them believe that Jesus was Christian. He was born Christian, or he was Catholic. It's very difficult for them to acknowledge that Jesus was Jewish. They believe that the Jews killed Jesus and therefore have no right to live in Israel. And the Jews deserve all the bad things that happened to them. There's a very small percentage of Arab Christians who call themselves believers. They say that they were born and raised Christian, but then they became believers. So they distinguish between themselves. And the litmus test is always Israel. A smaller number of our non-Arab Christians we have Baptists, Russian Orthodox, Romanian Orthodox, and a few others. But now for the Jewish contingent, which is, the majority of our country. Jews, from the first, what is a Jew? Since the first time that Jews were taken out of the land and we had the first exile, a Jew is anyone who is born to a Jewish mother. It's a matrilineal heritage, and our Ministry of Interior, directed by the rabbinate, that's the council, the Jewish council, they decide if someone is Jewish enough via patrilineal lines. Their biggest fear is that Jews will not follow rabbinic Judaism. And you can see that nearly 60% of our Jewish population do not identify as religious. Just like there are many schisms and divisions within Christianity and Islam, Judaism is not exempt. Remember what I said about how each Jew has more than one opinion? Within the ultra-Orthodox community, there is further division. There's Haredi, Hasidic, Chabad, or Lubavitch, and each division has their own chief rabbi globally and within each country. And we have the chief rabbi of each city. So after the Orthodox, we have conservative, then Reform, then traditional, and then secular. There's a small percentage of the Orthodox community are actually Zionists, meaning they believe that Jews should live in their ancestral homeland. Most believe that until Messiah comes, the land should lie empty. They live here and live comfortably off the government that they don't support, but there you go. What you aren't going to see on this kind of pie chart is Messianic Jews. It's a label I don't like to use. I don't use it for myself anyway, because it's quite ambiguous and means many different things to different people. It's too vague. It is essentially rabbinic Judaism with Jesus thrown in the mix, or it's some form of Protestant Christianity with traditions of rabbinic Judaism. There are non-Jews calling themselves Messianic Jews, and they take on rabbinic rituals. And there are Jews who call themselves Messianic, but have a skewed understanding of Jesus, his divinity, his role. I just would rather not align myself to that. So back to the question. What is the spiritual state of the majority of Israel? My answer to this would be, by and large, we are lost. The people do not know God, let alone the way to him. Rabbinic Judaism has been around since 150 years before Jesus. He spoke against it then. It grew stronger after the sacrifice system in the temple became null and void. And then the destruction of the temple in the year 70 and the ensuing dispersion of the Jewish people out of Jerusalem cemented it further. Rabbinic Judaism just grew stronger and stronger within the land. And then as people moved away, even outside the land, and you get the Jewish diaspora. When you try to talk to Jewish people about God, they equate it with this 2,000-year-old man-made religion. We have a lot of people who come here with this desire to share Jesus with the Jews, but why share Jesus with them if they don't even know God? Why would they want a way to him? So we try and teach the Jewish people what is written in their own book that the rabbis won't let them read. Anyway, enough about that. What is the mindset of the average Jewish citizen in regard to the present conflict? Is the country united in destroying its enemies? Again, we have this conflict, one Jew, many opinions. I'm going to show you a few pictures that I either took from my home, from our balcony, or while out and about. I did grab one or two from news reports. Something that definitely changed is the Israeli flag has become so prominent. Before the war, it was only on government buildings and around the time we celebrate Independence Day. But immediately after October the 7th, the Israeli flag started to show up all over the place. I'm no expert on this topic, but I feel that it was in response to the Palestinian flags and Hamas flags that our enemies just make, use every opportunity to display all over the world. I spent some time in Jordan last year, and they have the Jordanian flag everywhere. And the Jordanian flag represents different eras of Islam, and the Palestinian flag too. So it is Islamic by nature. And maybe this is why we have our Israeli flag all over, just, to counteract Islam. As October the 7th is our equivalent of September 11, we will make sure that it's never forgotten. The 7th of October is why we are still in a war. When our IDF went into Gaza with a ground incursion, the first thing they did is put up flags for each of the communities around the Gaza Strip that were nearly decimated on that horrific day. But now we have this flag everywhere. It's on our buildings in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv. These are my own photos. And the slogan is B'yachad ninatzeach, together we will win. It's been the mantra from the beginning. We've got a very polarized left and right divide. So this sign, which is En Yamin small, no right, left, and Lo ifridu b'neinu yoter, we will not be separated or divided anymore. We've heard this over and over, but unfortunately, we do have the great divide. It still persists. This is here in our city. It says that the mayor promotes the strengthening of the nation of Israel and the soldiers and all the defense and security forces of Israel. It's plastered on our public buses. Only together we will win. Praise for the IDF. Kol hakavod letzahal. We have a chain store here called Victory. So this is what it says in orange. It says, Anachnu b'derech levictory. We are on the way to victory. Together we will win. Again, from around my city, the mayor strengthens Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, and the soldiers of the IDF and security forces. In many of the stores, the Israeli brands got repackaged in the blue and white, and we are encouraged to buy blue and white. This is from a store that employs many Arabs because it's open on the Sabbath. And religious Jews can't work on the Sabbath, and it says we are always with you, for you, and we are stronger together, which is a nice sentiment. I'm not sure that the Arabs believe that. This is tissues, and it's on paper towels and all over. And of course we have the sign. This is really, really first and foremost in our minds, I think. Bring them, return them home now. The red says achshav, now. Here in our city, we have 2 hostages that are still in Gaza. We don't know if they're alive or dead. Too young. They're young. The young guy the family lives a block away from us. There's a huge sign in front of his building. People stop and put flowers there. The girl's family is about a mile from us in that direction. Same thing. And there's a constant vigil. Of course, we have our yellow ribbon everywhere. People pinning it to their clothes, and we have on our door, even people have it on their cars. It's like just first and foremost in everybody's minds. Even our traffic lights have been modified. Our orange light has become a yellow ribbon. We cannot forget these people. So it's heartbreaking, and actually I can't put it into words. These posters are down one of the main streets of Jerusalem in Jaffa Road. My tourists might remember this, the road, but these posters were put up, and yeah, of course, we now know that some were killed on the day. A huge amount were killed in captivity. I don't even want to think about the other things that could be happening to them. Your question is, what is the general opinion about it? And again, for every Jew, you have more than one opinion. Did you ever see the Fiddle on the Roof? And Topol, the actor, he's like, on the one hand, and on the other hand, and on the other hand. So, you know, we don't even know how many hostages are alive. We have people demanding that we do everything in our power to get them back through negotiations. We have others saying to do everything in our power to get them back through war. You know, I can't tell you how elated the country was when we rescued 4, but we won't, you know, probably won't be able to use the same tactics again. And since then, we've heard that even more hostages are not alive. This week, Netanyahu said, first, we will not end the war until we return all of our hostages, 120 hostages, the living and the deceased. We are committed to the Israeli proposal, which President Biden has welcomed. Our position has not changed. Second, which does not contradict the first, we will not end the war until we eliminate Hamas and until we return the residents of the South and the North securely to their homes. And third, at any price and in any way, we will thwart Iran's intentions to destroy us. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Iran. So there was a question, has this recent conflict hurt Israel's relationship with Egypt and the other Arab nations? We only had peace agreements with Egypt and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan up until August 2020. And then the State of Israel, United Arab Emirates, and the United States of America under the Trump administration concluded the Abraham Accords. So, you know, this was a joint agreement. Other countries followed. We have Morocco and Bahrain and Sudan. You know, it's actually quite miraculous in a way, because up until that point, these countries were committed to the Palestinian cause, which was to not acknowledge Israel's existence. So the Palestinian Authority and Hamas have called it a betrayal and a treacherous stab and caused grave harm. And, you know, the Palestinian cause is what basically led to this war, because they were fighting the normalization of these Arab countries with Israel. So has anything changed since the war? Well, what we have here is a report that was written in April this year. And it says that there has been an economic boost, and the United Arab Emirates Israel free trade deal even went into effect in April. Trade between Israel and the Abraham Accords signatories, as well as with Jordan and Egypt, increased 16% in 2023, surpassing $4 billion. They only measured the months before the Hamas attack on Israel. But, you know, after October the 7th, despite tensions and disagreements, the leadership of the Abraham Accords countries affirmed their continued commitment to these historic agreements. This makes the Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and the other Islamic Jihad groups very, very angry. But, you know, with the Accord countries, we were able to leverage the trust built with Israel over the previous years to coordinate humanitarian and medical aid to the Gaza Strip. A little bit more about how is Israel feeling, as well as a sense of national grief and an attempt at unity. There's also a sense of thankfulness for support that has come in various forms. This photo is from today, and all the chips from this company, there's this label. It says, "We are grateful to everyone involved in agriculture in those communities in the South." You know, a lot of people were killed, a lot of people were maimed, a lot of people were kidnapped, and then a whole lot were called into the reserves. So the agriculture would have absolutely fallen to pieces if volunteers hadn't come. That was from inland and from abroad. A lot of Americans came. But there is a general feeling in this country that we're all in this together. And I'm talking about the Jewish majority. There is huge gratitude to everyone who has volunteered. Are we united in fighting our enemies? I'm not sure. We still have a liberal left who seem to be either unaware that we have an enemy, or they blame us for having an enemy, or they think we should try harder to appease our enemy. Their biggest pet peeve is Netanyahu and the religious contingent. I'm sure you've heard of, I mean, it's the same thing. It's anything but Netanyahu. So our current political situation is in turmoil, and it shows. Now on to Iran. And there serious discussion about attacking Iran and making sure they do not develop nuclear weapons. So it's an interesting question. Tehran is more than 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem. It has not been the pattern for Israel to strike preemptively. Iran has repeatedly and clearly stated its goal of destroying Israel. So as you know, on the 13th of April this year, Iran did try and attack us. It was such an anticlimax. Even the other Arab countries were mocking Iran. It was funny, but I don't think it's a laughing matter, though. Iran has very strong proxies, much closer to us than they are. Even if Iran never directly launches attacks on Israel, its proxies certainly can, and they have been. You know, as of the last week of June 2024, Israel has been under constant attack from Lebanon and Syria since October. I'm not sure how much of it has made your news, but it does look like we are preparing for a full-on war. Netanyahu has spoken about it ad nauseum, endlessly, for years. In a recent speech to our nation, actually this week, he said, "We are in a fight for our existence, a fight being conducted on 7 fronts. The attack against us is being led by Iran, which openly seeks to destroy us. Iran and its proxies have been scheming to do this through missile attacks against Israel and by invading our territory. The more we deepen the war in the Gaza Strip, the more we discover additional evidence of the scope of the multi-front campaign against us. We will thwart this campaign. We will thwart it because Iran has completely misjudged us. It did not take into account our strength, our capabilities, our determination, or, you know, to defend ourselves and to impose a destructive cost on our aggressor." That's just to show you how far away we are from them. And yet, you know, they are closer than we think. So, yeah, another question. Are the Jewish people generally aware of prophecies as in Ezekiel 36 to 39, Zechariah 12 to 14? I would say no. The majority of our country is secular or of no religious affiliation. And the religious people only follow what their rabbis tell them. Rabbinic Judaism has been absolutely shaped to reject Jesus as Messiah. So any messianic prophecies relate only to a Messiah that hasn't come yet at all. They've been taught that they can't read the scriptures for themselves because they need rabbinic interpretation. So they don't read it. Even if they do find it and read it on their own, even for those of us who do have the Holy Spirit to teach us, we only know and understand it from what we've been taught. How much of the prophecies have already happened, how much of them are still to be fulfilled. So it's best to go to scripture. You know, behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it. And, you know, I'm not sure how many people are aware of this. We're just about coming to the end of the presentation. I'm going to close with 2 last questions. What is the general view of people towards the United States? And are they nervous about the loyalty of America to Israel? So there's a bit of a mindset generally that nobody's on our side. We can't trust anybody, and we have been let down before, and so we're alone. You know, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, when she met with the US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, Kissinger said, "You must remember that first, I'm an American, second, I'm a Secretary of State, and third, I'm a Jew." And Golda replied, "Henry, you forget that in Israel we read from right to left." So each consecutive administration has been met with trepidation here. Are they for us or against us? How did they treat us during the Holocaust? How have they helped us against our enemies? Even before we became a state, from Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, JFK, actually we have a memorial for him because he was a true friend of Israel. He was Catholic. Carter treated us so badly and still does. He's so pushing for pro-Islamic stuff. Reagan, the Bush sandwich with Bill Clinton in the middle, followed by Obama, who was a continuation of the Clinton filling, absolutely no friend of Israel. Already when he visited here as a senator, he was making waves against the Jewish Israelis and building bridges with our terrorist neighbors. Donald Trump did the most for us in terms of recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and recognizing the Golan Heights as ours. The general feeling about your current administration is that it is pro-Islam. It has caused tension in terms of, for example, we have bought weapons from the US, but Biden or his puppet masters are not allowing those ammunition, the munitions to be shipped here, which leads us into the final question. What is the impact of evangelical Christians in Israel? Now, on a very practical level, evangelical Christians bring in a lot of revenue by way of tourism. I haven't worked since October, even though I was fully booked with groups all through 2024. So I'm one of 7,000 guides that I had, and I work with, primarily with evangelicals. It means that I have lost $2,500 a month since October. The country has lost my tax. The vendors have closed down. Hotels are either looking after our displaced people from the south and from the north. Bus drivers, tourist sites, everyone has lost income because of our loss of tourism. So something that needs to be highlighted, though, is how many evangelical Christians joined with Jewish and Messianic organizations to volunteer since October. There's Sarel, who supports soldiers, and there's Laket, which is the equivalent of your gleanings. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. They help with the process of agriculture, from planting to pruning, harvesting, cleaning, packing, distributing, putting food on the table. There are others as well. Also, practical support in terms of your participation in marches, simply writing, asking how we are, standing up for us, speaking up for us in the face of lies. This is truly appreciated. We are grateful. Your prayers, this cannot be said enough. We cherish them. There are small and big testimonies that have led non-believers to say, we know it was because someone was praying for us. Jerusalem is synonymous with Zion and Israel. It is found throughout Scripture, Old and New Testament. We pray to the God of Israel. Israel is a person, a people, and a place. And God has promises for all three. So please keep praying, because we should love what the God of Israel loves. Here's a verse from Isaiah 66. It says, rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her, all you who love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all you who mourn for her. And I'll end with this better known verse from Psalm 122. It's Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. This Sha'alu is request or beseech. In English, it's pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for praying. And thanks so much for this opportunity. I do pray that you will be blessed and prosper.